Welcome back, builders. This week we are taking a look at Middle-Age Man Tower of Avalon. The realm of man is a feudal kingdom. Their kingdom was established by conquering a race of tall and magically powerful beings known as Tuatha. When the Tuatha were destroyed, their greatest treasure was found, the magical forest of Avalon. Hidden deep within was a great magic. The witches of man entered the forest, learned the old lore, and helped man grow in power and influence. The infantry of man is limited and lacks heavy troops. Their regular armies most often consist of powerful knights and skilled longbowmen. The witches train their own special troops, the wardens and knights of Avalon. These troops are very skilled and are also magically enchanted by the witches. The monks who serve the god of man are divinely inspired scholars who gather and record knowledge in the monasteries scattered throughout the land. People displaced by the witches and their servants dwell outside the fortified cities of the nobility. So this is a pretty cool nation. It is mostly human with a few of the Logran type troops that are left, like this guy. And we have, well, it says we are limited on heavy troops. That's not true. We actually can get a landless knight who is decently heavy. So I think that is pretty good spread of troops. For race, we are essentially humans. I believe the Logran, yeah, they're a little better. They're like human and a little bit. But for the most part, we're basically humans. Our infantry is infantry, longbowmen, knights, and some special troops of Avalon. For magic, we are pretty powerful in nature, glamour, and we have a little bit of water, earth, air, and fire, although especially low on this end of things. For priests, we are weak. I believe that the priest level 1 is our highest recruitables, but we have divinely inspired researchers. We'll take a look at that when we get there. Building-wise, we have the standard forts of the era, and our temples cost only 300 gold. And we're going to want to definitely be spamming out temples because we can use that divinely inspired researcher as a very cheap research chassis. For sites, we have the Forest of Avalon. The Forest of Avalon gives us several leaders, several sacreds, along with producing 3 nature gems, and increases the magic scales in the capital by 1. We also have the Tower of Avalon, which gives us our final cap-only mage and 2 additional glamour gems. So pretty good, if not limited variety of gems. The extra magic scale's kind of nice. And yeah, overall, I like this quite a bit. We have a decent spread of troops. Notably here, though, no crossbow. So we do have the longbow, which is still serviceable, but that is something that perhaps we would like to find somewhere. Units and sacreds. We have a pretty good variety of units, starting with our Logran Slinger. Can be recruited outside of forts as well. As with most slingers, I'm not hugely into them. We're going to really struggle to try to get something like Flaming Arrows out, although maybe we could get some of the poison buffs, but it's so-so at best. They are wielding an axe. They're not very good at it. They have a sling. They're mediocre at it. I'm not feeling these guys too much, especially when you have the option to use longbows instead. Speaking of, here's our longbow. Our longbow troops are pretty decent. Of note here, while they are humans, they are extra strong, and they have extra precision. And yeah, this is a pretty good archer type unit, I would say. We are only 10 gold, 7 resources, 13 recruitment points, so very cheap. We have a short sword as our melee weapon, and we're pretty good with it. We have a long bow, and we are very good with it. Having 12 precision is pretty notable. We have good range and decent damage. These make good counter batteries for crossbow units. So you get these guys and you fire at archers, hoping to wipe them out, ideally before they really get that second volley off, but probably not. While they're relatively lowly armored, frankly, you'd be paying a lot for armor that isn't going to help you against crossbows, who are going to be your main adversaries. So this is enough that if you're just taking plink damage from some other archers, it'll help. And it's cheap enough to keep the unit very cheap if you're trying to fight archers. So overall, I like that quite a bit. Should be noted that we're not particularly high morale, so just note that. They may run away if they start losing those duels. Next up, we get into our infantry spread, and we have a pretty decent spread here. First up, we just have Spearmen. This is essentially the independent Spearman unit that you're used to seeing. 10 gold, 9 resources, 9 recruitment, so he's very cheap, very baseline, is a very baseline human. He's wielding a length 3 spear. Armor-wise, he has a ringmail cuirass, an iron cap, and a shield. So that works out to 8 body armor and 16 on the head. So on the lighter end of troops. Next up, we have the long spear. This is the same guy, except for now he has upgraded some of his gear. He has a long spear, he's wearing a scale mail cuirass, an iron cap, and a shield. On this guy, he has 10 body armor. I do prefer these. Not only do you have the little bit of extra protection helps, but the length 4 spear means that you can get hopefully more repels on other units. Should be noted that for both of these, they only have 10 attack, so they're not the best repellers in the world, but they're not the worst either. I think the main benefit here is being very cheap. Should be noted, again, we do not have the best morale, so just be aware of that. Next up, we have the Logren Warrior. This can be recruited outside of forts as well. They're so-so. 12 gold, 15 resources, 9 recruitment. Outside of forts, that's going to be a little on the pricier side. We do have the above human stats with 12 HP, 11 strength, and 11 attack. So they are wielding a length 1 axe pretty decently at 11 attack. Notably, 19 slashing damage is pretty good. And they do have a javelin, which they're okay with. They're not stupendous. Should be noted that we've moved up to a full ringmail, a half helmet, and a shield, which gives us 12 on the body, which is pretty good protection. Next up, we have Tower Guard. The Tower Guard are back to being humans. These are pretty decently trained humans, and they have castle defense bonus. So when defending a castle, they are extra defense. So these guys have a full point of defense. Can be pretty nice for holding up walls if you have them in place ahead of time. They are pretty good with their broadsword. Now, unfortunately, broadsword's only length 1, so you're going to probably have some repel issues, but 12 attack is pretty good, 16 slashing damage is okay. And we moved up again. We have the chainmail cuirass, a half helmet and a shield, giving us 12 on the body. Usable troops if you find the weapon desirable. Next up, we have a forester, which can also be recruited in all forests. This guy is dual wielding an axe and a dagger. He is pretty cheap at 12 gold, 7 resources, 14 recruitment points. He is in leather armor, so he's only rocking 7 on the head, 9 on the body. I think the main use for these guys is the fact that they're stealthy. They do have a pretty good damage output just based on their attack density. So if you're fighting lots and lots of low protection, pretty easy to hit troops like chaff, these guys are not terrible at trading with those at least. Should be noted they also have a short bow. So another range option, although maybe of dubious quality. And they have a patrol bonus. So when patrolling here, they have a 2.2 patrol strength. Next up, we have the Landless Knight. This is a pretty good unit. And one of the reasons I would say, well, this nation does actually have pretty good heavy troops. I do consider 16 to be in the realm of heavy in the Middle Age. And he's not bad. 13 gold, 24 resources, 16 recruitment. A little bit pricier, but we armored up quite a bit. We are pretty decently trained. We wield a broadsword with 12 attack and 17 damage. That's respectable. And armor-wise, we're using the chainmail hauberk, and we are using a half helmet and a kite shield. Kite shields are something we haven't seen too many of yet, but this has been invented at this point. It's a 19 protection, -2 defense, 6 parry on it with 2 encumbrance. Defense-wise, that means we have 15 on the body plus the shield. So pretty good, actually, as a heavy troop. Do note, combat speed is only 8, so they're pretty slow. But for just a human troop, this is pretty decent. They will trade pretty well with things that are lighter than them, and they can at least hold their own against other heavily armored troops. Next up, we have the Logren Cavalry. These can be recruited outside of forts as well. This is a light-ish, I suppose. Let's call him a light cavalry. He's got a light lance. He's decently armored, although not super. His horse, unfortunately, only has 5 body armor. That's going to let you down. We have better cavalry options, like the Knight of Man. Knight of Man is a heavy cav. They is using a Destrier with plate barding, which has 18 on the body and 21 on the head, which is great armor. For his equipment, he's wielding an actual lance and a broadsword, full chainmail, full helmet, and a kite shield. So this guy is coming in at 18 on the body, and the horse similar. So very nice heavy cav unit that we can just recruit. Next up, we have our first sacred. We have the Warden of Avalon. This is a cap-only sacred. This is a heavily armored human sacred. Sacred, they are stealthy. They have force survival, true sight, and bodyguard 3. So some interesting things of the stealth and the true sight can come in handy in certain circumstances. He has a great sword, which is a length 2 weapon. He's very good with it at 14 attack, 25 damage. And I should note up here, he's magically enhanced. He's on the witch. He's riding the witches, I suppose, and he's got the 17 HP. He's got 13 strength, 13 attack. That is superhuman stats up there. So these guys are like human plus plus. If I had to rate them. He's wearing the full chainmail and the full helmet. So 18 on the body is very nice, very heavy, and combining that with a good bless, you can make some interesting builds with this. No natural protection here, so you could do that. You could give them extra strength. Lots of things you could do here. But at the end of the day, they're still human-ish sacreds. While these are definitely on the higher end of average of what we've looked at from Middle Age so far, just keep in mind the limitations. This isn't a giant or anything. Also note, cost-wise, 26 gold, 28 resources, 33 recruitment points. That's pretty pricey. That's a pretty pricey thing. Although, I don't feel this is overpriced if you do want to use these guys. I think that's totally fine. Finally, we have our last cap-only sacred, and I think this is the jewel of middle-aged man, the Knight of Avalon. He rides a unicorn as his mount, very similar to what we just looked at. He's sacred, he's got poison resistance, forest survival, he has recuperation, and he's disease resistant, and he's a pretty skilled rider. Again, I think he's got the witch enhancements here because he is more than human on his stats. Using the lance and broadsword very well, and similar armor to what we just looked at with a kite shield in addition. So protection-wise, 18 on the body, very nice. What makes this guy very interesting to me is he rides a unicorn, and that means he has the alicorn attack, which is a good attack at length 1, and it's magical. So even if you don't take magic weapon bless, you actually have that on a good attack. And he still has this hoof attack, so maybe quickness would be vaguely interesting here. Quickness on cavalry units is pretty decent, and the fact that our mount would benefit from it, and we would double up on our magic attacks, could be pretty interesting. He has silver barding, which is 19 on the body, so even heavier than what we were looking at before. This is a good sacred. This is a good heavy cav sacred, and I think you could go many different directions for your bless here. I definitely want to call out the fact this Alicorn's a really good mount. Decent HP, good stats. Because he has 2 attacks, and they're good attacks, he could proc Blood Surge. You could make good use of Strength. Lots of things you could do here. Also, the mount itself has True Sight while the rider doesn't. So if you're fighting things that are using Glamour or Invisibility, etc. against you, this guy actually can hit them without those penalties. I like these quite a bit. And I think that they have enough HP that even regen might be vaguely useful here, although pricey. Heroes, commanders, and profit. Hero-wise, we actually have a big hero lineup. Must be a nation the devs really like. We have the Knight of Stone. He's a heavy cav. That's what he is. We have the Green Knight. He's interesting. He's another heavy cav, but this time sacred with regeneration. So pretty cool. Definitely would thug him out if I got him. We have the Heroine, again, another sacred cav, although this one, notice the unarmored. You would want to gear her up before you send her out. Otherwise, just a cool one. We have the Blind one. This is a mage that brings in some diversity. We don't naturally have Astral, and she's pretty good at it. So 3 Astral, 3 Nature, 2 Glamour, Priest level 1 and is sacred. She does have Fortune Teller, but she is blind. Also, this is the first unit we looked at, I believe, that has Spellsinger. Spellsinger means that you take longer to cast. I believe it's 50% longer, but you also have less fatigue for doing it. And I believe that's also 50%. Just know when you're scripting things, sometimes the timing of scripts can be very tight. You can only hold your troops for 2 rounds before they run off. So if you spend a round casting something, you're at a round and a half. So by the time you get your second spell off, it's round 3, and they may be out of range. So just keep that in mind when you're scripting things. Next up, we have the Etten King. He comes with 2d6 tower guards at his side each battle. I think this guy would be really fun to thug out. Get him like a regen ring, get him some armor. He has 2 heads, so he can actually wear 2 helmets. He's unsurroundable 1. I like this guy a lot. I think that's just cool and fun. Next up, we have Cambion. Cambion's another mage. Again, bringing in some more diversity. I believe this is our strongest air mage, air 2, strongest earth mage, earth 3, a good astral with astral 2. So we could do astral boosters here or communion items. He's got nature 3 and glamour 2. Fire resistance, poison resistance. He can actually shape change into a sinister hawk. I've never got this guy to see what that is, but I have a feeling it's just a stealth chassis that can fly. Still, I'll take it. He's stealthy. He's a demon. He has Fortune Teller 15 and Dark Vision. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Like to get him. Finally, we have Faye. Faye has Water 1, Astral 2, Nature 3, Glamour 3, and can shapeshift into a raven. She has Glamour and is a spell slinger. So just another good mage. So overall, we have a lot of heroes and some pretty good ones and some pretty fun ones. So I don't think any of these are horrible. I think they're all usable. So might be a nation that you might consider Fortune on to try to get your heroes sooner rather than later. Moving up to our regular commanders. First up, we have the Royal Forester, who can also be recruited in all forests. This gives us a recruit in Forest Scout, although he is pricey at 55 gold. He's got 55 stealth, forest survival, patrol bonus, and he's ambidextrous. He duels axes and a short bow. Independent scouts would be better just because they're cheaper, but I will take him if I don't get those. Next up, we have the Castilian. This is a pretty bog standard human leader. 100 leadership is good. He's decently armored and does have a shield. Not much other to say about this guy. Only 1 recruitment point, so you can grab him and a scout. You can grab him and a monk. Grab 2 of them. Usable. That's it. Just usable. I like him. Next up, we have the monk. This can be recruited outside forts as well. You just need a temple. And this is one of our really unique-ish units. So he's a priest level 1. He has 3 research. He's sacred. He's stealthy. He's a mundane researcher. Mundane researchers are not affected by magic or drain scale. So if you were in drain 4, he would still have 3 research. If you were in magic 4, he would still have 3 research. He also has divine insights. This means the number of active researchers with divine insights is limited to the strength of the domain in the province. So if you have 2 dominion, you can have 2 researching. If you lose 1 and go down to 1, only 1 can keep researching and the other will pop out of it. This is an argument for maybe taking a little bit higher dominion, or at least trying to temple up with our cheap temples to get it higher. Why would you want this guy? Well, A, he's ignores drain. If for some weird reason you went drain, that is a bonus. 2, 14 gold per year and 35 gold to recruit. That is dirt cheap. That is dirt cheap. You're getting like 50% cost. So you have 10 gold per research is normally what I go for. We're at half of that. So let's say we have 5 dominion strength. You could have 5 of these researching. That's only 15 research, but you're only paying like, what's that, 70 gold a year in research, which is nothing. We also don't have good priests to bless troops. So just having these guys around for if you need to grab some to help bless is handy. They are stealthy, so you could do like some stealth preaching or something. I like these guys. I think they're very interesting and very unique. Totally usable. I like getting enough of them in my fort to have them researching. And like in the game behind me, I was really struggling with Dominion, so I needed some to help preach. Next up, we have a Bard. This is an interesting one. 2 recruitment points now. I should note the monk was only 1. So you could get 2 of these guys or like a leader in one of these guys at the same turn. The Bard is our first proper leader at 2 recruitment points. He comes in with only Glamour 1. He's stealthy, forest survival. He's a spy and he has spell slinger. Spy means if you go to an enemy capital, you can gain extra insights into the graphs. You also have a special action that you can up unrest in that province. So they can be pretty good. You could like really bomb someone's unrest with a couple spies if you get lucky. Next up, we have the Daughter of Avalon. Daughter of Avalons are Nature 1, Glamour 1, 9 Research, they're Sacred. 4 Survival, they give supply bonus because they are Nature Mages and Spell Singers. They are 9 Research for 48 gold, so pretty good efficiency there. I think this is a good choice for a Research Mage, and it doubles because of one of our unique spells, which lets us get into communions. These make good communion slaves for what we want to be putting in communions. At 120 gold, not really breaking the bank, so pretty good. I would definitely get them. Next up, we have the Mother of Avalon. This is the same unit, but better. We've jumped up to 305 gold cost, so pretty significant cost increase. We have 13 research for 122, so we're kind of at that line of being efficient. We have Nature 1, Glamour 1, Priest 1. We get 2 100% chances for a Nature or Glamour, and a second chance for either a Water or an Earth or a Nature. So you get one from each of those 2 selections. So you could end up with a Nature 3 just from this, or a Glamour 2, etc., etc., etc. Overall, usable, a little on the random side. They're okay. Next up, we have, let's skip those, Crone of Avalon. This is our cap-only mage. She is 3 Nature, 2 Glamour, Priest 1. She has a 100% chance of Air, Water, Earth, Nature, Glamour. Pretty good there. She is slow to recruit. She is cap only. She is pricey at 465, and she is old, and she's pretty old at that. However, these are nice. These are pretty nice. You can easily get into communions. We use a special spell for it, and then we could cast Twilight, which would help all of our Glamour mages go up even higher. So I think you're going to want a few of these, although because she's so dang old, just don't go too crazy on that. They're expensive. 17 research for 186 is just cross the line to not being efficient. But if you're getting these, you're going to want them out and doing something, not sitting at home and researching. Next up for the last mage, we have the Logren Wise Man. This is a recruit at non-fort province. So you need a non-fort lab. They come in with Earth 1 and a 100% random of Fire, Air, Earth, and Nature. So I would like to get a lot of these guys out. I would love to get an air guy out and searching, be able to make a few owl quills, would certainly be handy. We could really up our efficiency. This is our only fire access, I believe. And you can roll into Earth 2s. Earth 2s can Earth power and then do interesting buffs. So even just something as simple as temper armors on our heavy troops makes them very tough. Very, very tough. The extra strength buffs would be great for our sacreds because we could really use that with all the extra attacks we're getting. Lots and lots of good things that we can get out of these guys. So I think you're going to want to try to get them. Should be noted though, Inept Researcher 4. So we have 5 research for 100 gold. So we are very inefficient at researching. If you get these guys, get them out, get them site searching, get them crafting, get them into your armies, or get them killed. You do not want these guys sitting around researching. You could do much, much better on efficiency. Finally, we have our 2 sacred commanders. We have the Lord Warden, cap only. This is the foot leader. Do note, he is not a priest. He is sacred. He does have stealth, 4 survival, true sight, and he's ambidextrous, but cannot bless things. A little unfortunate there. Of note, of interest, he's only 1 recruitment point. So you could get 2 of these guys out of a fort in a single turn. And they're not the worst light thug. Like, I could totally see giving this guy, he'd probably need a weapon and maybe a trinket, like give him a bracer for a little extra protection. Give him an AoE weapon, at least 1 in one hand, and maybe a shield or maybe dual wield, and he's good to go. So I think that could make an interesting light thug chassis, like an army thug. Also note, he has 100 leadership. Finally, we have the Knight Commander of Avalon. This is our Knight Commander. Again, no priest levels, unfortunately. Sacred, poison resist, force survival, recuperation, disease resistance, good rider. He's riding the same unicorns as our sacreds. He has 100 leadership. Not even too expensive and only 1 recruitment point. So again, I totally think you could actually do these guys as kind of light thugs, especially depending on what your bless is. But replace that broadsword with an AoE weapon, and I think you're going to town with that. He already has a good shield, but you could replace it. Again, maybe a bracer here just to bump that protection up even higher. I like these guys quite a lot. Who would I make my prophet? I honestly would try for one of these two guys, especially this one, I think. It's more mobile. It doesn't have its own priest levels. I would definitely go with this. If not, then I would probably go for a Lord Warden. You start the game with a Castilian. I don't like these. It's only 16 protection. You could easily get at least this guy on turn 2 and then profit him on turn 3. I would go that route. They're just much, much more survivable than anything else. I wouldn't make a crone. She's going to die of old age. I wouldn't make these. They're just too weak. I think it comes down to these two for your profit. As for national items, we have no national items. As for national spells, we have several national spells. First up, let's look at Conjuration. We can summon black dogs. Note, we do not have native death access. That is at Conjuration 2. At Conjuration 3, we can summon in Kuside. At Glamour 2 from that, we definitely can, and we have native Glamour income. These are quite good. We'll look at them in a second. At 4, we can summon in Bargeist. Again, pretty good units, but we don't have death access. We also can summon in Herds of Unicorns, and we can do this natively. Let's take a look at all those chassis. Black dogs are interesting in the fact that they have Dark Power 2, which is pretty strong. I don't think you would regret getting these to help you expand underground, or if somebody else has done darkness. Do note, because we can do Twilight, we can also do Nightfall. So if we choose to have night come up, we can do that. So you could force these guys to get their Dark Power bonus. They have Dark Vision natively, they're animals, they have Iron Vulnerability. Note, Iron is very common now, so this is actually kind of more of a thing than it was in early age. They're also stealthy. Remember, we do have a stealthy commander, so we can lead these around with him, and they're not sacred, so they don't need to be blessed. So, could be something interesting there. Next up, we have the Kuside. This is a very good one. These are our good boys from early age. They have Dark Vision 50, Animal, Force Survival, Iron Vulnerability, Stealth, and they are Sacred. They are size 4. When we get to Blesses, we'll talk about it more, but Large Bless might have a place on this nation. Otherwise, they're just a pretty decent chassis here. Do note they don't have any poison or anything on their bite. They're okay, but they're not super duper killy. Finally, we have... Oh, not finally. Next, we have the Bargeist. Bargeist is another really interesting one. Sacred, Stealthy, Iron Vulnerability, Curse Bestower. So anybody who attacks this unit in melee could get permanently cursed. Animal, Dark Vision, Dark Power 3. Dark Power 3 and Sacred is disgusting. That's 19 strength, 16 attack, plus whatever bless we've got rolling. We do have a Venomous Bite, which is poison magic, 5 on the weak poison. We hit hard enough, we're going to be able to get through armor to get that on. We're size 4, so again, larger could be interesting here. I think a pretty bargain bin bless could just be larger and maybe some heroism. We'll look at that again later, but very nice chassis. But remember, we don't have native death. So just keep that in mind before you get too excited about this guy. Finally, we have unicorns. They are the mount that we're using. If we were to summon them in, they have no armor, otherwise it's the same stats as the mount. If you needed a magic weapon, that's one use I could think of for them. But other than that, I don't love it. They just don't have any protection. We have other things we could spend glamour gems on. Not in love with these guys. Next, we have some other national spells. These are all in Thaumaturgy. First up at level 1, we have an alternative to Astral's Communions called Chorus Master and Chorus Slave. These are otherwise, I believe, identical to Communions. And I believe they put you into Astral Communions if you had an Astral Mage that did it. So I believe they're the same. Unlike Communions and Blood Sabbaths, which are different now, I believe these ones go the same. If you know differently, please correct me in the comments. But what this is important for is we have good access to Glamour and we don't have good access to Astral. So we have easy Glamour Communions. Next up, we have Gish. I believe that's how you pronounce that, or Gaius, depending on who you listen to. At Glamour 2, this is pretty easy for us to cast, especially if we use our communions. This is an interesting spell. 100% precise, range 25, only 20 fatigue. It is difficult to negate with magic resistance. And what it'll do is it's essentially like a charm. Anyone hit with this will randomly attack nearby people, including allies, and they have to pass a +8 difficulty morale check to get out of it. And if they do, then they're permanently cursed. So pretty interesting there. So things that have low-ish magic resistance or low-ish morale are good targets, especially if they're killing enough to kill their allies that are near them. So pretty interesting spell there. Like a low-level charm almost. And while we're here, other magic that might be interesting, even if it is not necessarily a national spell, is at 4 Thaumaturgy, we have Visions of Death. So between either the Communion or Twilight, we can get to Glamour 3 pretty easily on a lot of people. And Visions of Death is range 35. It's 100% accurate, 20 fatigue cost, and it deals 25 plus magic damage that's armor negating. It's false damage, so it can't be regened, and it's a magic resist spell. I also believe that, I don't think I can bring it up here, but I think you get +5 damage per level of your mage, which is a lot of power on that. Yeah, right here. Damage is increased by 5 for every extra level of the caster. So if you can get your glamour up higher, you can really crank out the damage. And false damage is very strong because you can't regen it. That can be quite interesting. Other spells to be on the lookout is Twilight from Alteration, which gives glamour power +1. Or you could move it up to Nightfall, which you lose the extra power, but now you're fighting under darkness. Could be pretty good. In addition, in Evocation, we can do things like Ephemeral Blast, which is false damage in a pretty large area of effect. Could be pretty good. We can do False Horrors, which are pretty spooky. Could be pretty good things there. We do have some heroes that might be able to get up Wailing Winds with our communions. So between that and False Horrors, that'd be pretty good. And finally, in Conjuration, we have all of the Fey summons, which we can do. So summon Fey Footfolk, summon Fey Knights. These are very powerful. Do note that if you do this in a cold forest, you get incredibly powerful Unseelie Knights, which have cold power. Or no, they have cold protection, putting them at very heavy cavalry. Something that you could add to your already good cavalry. Finally, you have Summon Fey Prince, which is basically a leader of those. Good stuff all around. In addition, we have lots of good nature. So you could do self-buffing, you could do Breath of the Dragon, you could do poison arrows. I think you also might want to consider going for rituals, like Mother Oak would be pretty good. And then you can use that to do other nature things. Because you can get nature into a communion rather easily, we can do pretty big nature spells like Relief, like Giant Warriors, like Wooden Warriors. So I think you really want to look at getting some stuff for your glamour people to do and then getting some stuff for nature. The extra protection is very appreciated. It makes our heavy troops very heavy, makes our light troops much safer. And yeah, all around, pretty good combination there. Okay, so let's bring all of that together. Middle-aged Man is a nation that has a good combination of troops at decent price points. I think they're all relatively efficient. We have some really good sacred cavalry. We have some good heavy cavalry. We have a good, somewhat human heavy infantry if you don't want the cavalry for some reason. We have a heavy recruitable unit. We have some repellers. We have some good longbows to try to counter some of the crossbows, which would be the natural counter to our heavy stuff. Our national spells let us do interesting communions and pretty strong nature power. While we don't have super wide magic, we're good at what we can do, and we have a dabble of other things. I think that getting some crafted items on those low paths could be pretty good. The owl quills come to mind, different one-handed weapons that have AoE come to mind if you want to try to do some thugging. I think those could be pretty good and pretty interesting. Scales wise, we definitely need production. I think we need production more than we need order, but I think we need both. We have really good heroes, so I think I'd like to see some fortune. We have magic resistant spells that we want to cast, so I think I want magic scales. And while we have people who are immune to magic scales for research bonuses, we have plenty of other people who would benefit from that. So I think we want decent blesses at least, and I think we want good scales as well. So we're going to be a little tight on our design, I think, for our pretenders. Speaking of that, let's go take a look at pretender design. First up, this is a pretender I designed. This is Cold Blood Pete. The idea behind this guy is we want to try to make things cold so that we can summon Fey Knights and get the Unseelie Knights. In addition, he has essentially maxed out scales and an okay amount of Dominion score. Now, our Knights are so stupid expensive, it's going to be hard to get 5 of them out at the beginning of the game. And we have half-price temples, so I think we're going to want to temple spam and get our Dominion power up. But you could trade some of this out for a little bit more. Blessing-wise, I went with shock resistance, winter's gift, so that our sacreds are not slowed down by the snow. Cold resistance, just to help them out with fatigue during that. We have enchanted blood. I took this because I didn't want to get regen if I was going to be imprisoned. And this gives us at least a little bit of regen on our heavy troops. Blood Surge is excellent on the unicorn mounts, so they are easily able to proc that for themselves. And Heroism. I think Heroism is good for our survivable sacreds, in addition to our multitude of sacred mages and our sacred priests, who are also researchers. So pretty good, just kind of rainbow bless here. You definitely could change this up and go for more resists, but I quite liked it. Stat-wise, he also can make staves of elemental power, which could be useful, although niche perhaps. He himself is not going to be doing any of the summoning, so he's mostly either going to research or do some of his other spells here, big earth things or big air things that you natively could not do and might surprise people. Beyond that, we have a middling amount of chassis choices. As mentioned before, I think maybe a cheap, larger bless might be interesting. Thrice-Horned Boar comes in at size 9, so he could benefit from larger. We could take him. Let's see if we can get him larger and regeneration. So larger and regeneration. We're at -5. That is really pricey. What would we want? We would probably want... Well, I don't even know. Let's just grab something. And I think I would go here first and then here. So -180. So for this guy, we would have to knock down some stuff. We're going to need some Dominion. Yeah, this is probably too pricey. But this would be all right. Your Knights would be 1 to a square, but larger's not bad for them, and that spreads them out so they don't take evocations to the face. Our size 4 summons could benefit from larger, and this gives us an awake expander. I don't think I would play this guy, though. I think these scales are really bad for man, but just an example of something you could possibly do. And let's go into that again. You could go with just a cheap regen. If you wanted something like Ermine Soul, you could do that. We do have the Monolith. That's probably the cheaper, for the cheapest large, if you just wanted just large and nothing else. Would only need 2 more points, so something like that, and then you could fiddle around. Note, you don't need to be awake for that, so you could go dormant or even imprisoned. Could be something there. Titan-wise, as usual, I'm just not in love with a lot of the Titans. Just not in love with a lot of the Titans. I do think this nation is one that quickness would be pretty interesting on, so maybe an Oracle. Get rid of the larger. So we would need, what is that, 9? I think we need magic scales. Yeah, 9. And then we'll pay for that here. And then whatever else we could get, we'd grab some extra heroism. So we'd have quickness and heroism. I think that's perfectly fine. Do note we have good nature, so we could put some regen on the battlefield for our knights. They would appreciate that. Let's actually, so we wanted to go cold. Oh yeah. Now this is imprisoned though, so I would probably want to take this down to dormant to make this playable. So we'll do... Yeah, there we go. I think this would be fine. We have good enough troops that we could struggle bus our way for the first year of expansion. And then once quickness comes out, our knights will be really good, like really good. I think that could be pretty interesting. I think you could also go much cheaper. You have something like the Great Sorceress down here. If I was going to take her, I would do something that has at least 2 death, and that way she could do those other national summons that we otherwise can't do. And then some extra glamour. What would we want? Probably not that. Although Stealth Knights would be pretty funny. Do displacement. We can buff blur quite easily. We don't need True Sight. I think I would make this like super duper budget. Probably just grab a bunch of heroism here. Bunch of extra XP. We're gonna take her like Awake maybe. Make her like an Awake researcher / sight searcher. Go with some more rainbow. Actually, maybe we knock that down a little bit and we get maybe like some rainbow resist. So like fire resist, shock resist, cold resist. Yeah, maybe something along those lines. And she's gonna need some Dominion. Maybe knock that back. Whatever, you can play with that. So what I'm saying here is we actually have pretty good choices despite the limited. I would stay away from the sloth things because I feel like we need production too, just to get enough guys out. Could be interesting up here. We do have the Duo of farming. He actually can give you an extra production scale. Maybe you really want to go extra scales, so we take him at dormant. And we're mainly taking him for the scales, so we're going to want to make use of those. Something like that. And then I don't even know what we'd take up here, but could be something if you just really want heavy scales. So I think we could use an Awake Expander. I don't know how you do that and get decent scales and make your sacreds worth using. I think you're just trying to pick and do too many things there. Especially because we can't use the sloth people, who would make that a little bit easier. I think we have a good variety. I'm really curious to see what other people like. I think this is a nation people like to take Hell Blesses because this is such a good chassis. So share your heavy blesses, share your other builds there. I'd be pretty curious about that. Okay, builders. Overall, I would say man is a very interesting but somewhat straightforward nation. As you can see, this is kind of one of the shorter ones, but there wasn't a lot of like heavy subtlety here. We have good troops. We have good sacred. We have good mage. You know, it's kind of straightforward. I actually kind of like these guys as a relatively straightforward nation. If they didn't do the communion stuff, I would actually say they'd be a pretty good beginner nation. But you do really need to use that chorus master ability to get your big glamour stuff out and your big nature stuff out. I think glamour is an excellent path. We have buffs, we have offensive things, we have false damage, we have the ability to make it dark, we have the ability for a battlefield-wide mage buff. Overall, very good, very fun, lots of things to do. If you haven't done any of the glamour summons, like the Unseelie Knights, they're very powerful, they're pretty cool. They bring in glamour troops that we don't natively have, but would just give us more good troops to use. Pretty good there. I'm very happy with their transition into 6. I think the glamour is very strong on them. I like that the communions are interesting and we have good communion people. Like these daughters are very good to support that because they have the 2 paths you're mostly going to be casting. So as long as you stick to mostly those 2 paths, you're not going to blow up your communions. And remember, they're spell singers. So while they're slow, they're very low on fatigue. So you're going to have some really powerful communions that can just keep on chugging for the entire combat. Okay, builders, let me know what you like about man, and I will see you on stream. I think this is going to be a fun one. Hopefully we won't have a horrible expansion. I do find my expansion with them is a little on the weak side, so maybe if you have some man expansion tips, also leave those down below for me. I'll catch you in the next one, builders. Get out there and build a forest.